Hey there, I'm just adding this in after the rest of what I've just recorded and put together because the patch has now dropped, so the new TTK is in place. I urge everybody to go and play it and make up their own minds whether they like it or not. This video was put together before this happened because DICE didn't say when it was going to drop specifically, and I still don't think at this point have actually confirmed it, so go and play it, make up your own mind. And I was a little worried that my coverage seemed a little too scathing of it, so I just want to reiterate, I'm not complaining directly about the TTK patch change because I haven't played it at this point. It's more so about why it's being done now and the order of things being done, plus the communication. I really hope this all turns out well, I really do. I just have some doubts, but we'll have to see. So go and play, give your feedback to DICE in a positive and constructive manner whether you like it or not. Alright, cheers. Now onto the video. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the video. I'm GetGoodGuy, and DICE are increasing the time to kill in Battlefield 5 today. That's the 12th of December, and to me, this absolutely doesn't make sense, like at all. But I want to open by saying, please listen to what I have to say before commenting, because I'm not simply bashing the time to kill being increased as a bad idea for all players. It's down to personal opinion whether you prefer a longer or shorter time to kill. What I'm going to talk about is why I feel like now isn't the right time to do this, why it isn't logical, and then I'll follow that with more so my opinion on the TTK change itself and whether I like or dislike the premise. So if you do drop into the comment section and leave a message that clearly didn't watch all of the video and taking what I'm saying, then I'm just going to reply with "you didn't listen," because I'm spending way too much time currently communicating with people who haven't even properly listened to my points in my content. Also, I will of course be giving the new time to kill values a chance, and I hope to be pleasantly surprised. I'm not just going to be negative regardless of the outcome, but I just feel like making this change now is the wrong idea, whether it's still fun or not. I urge you to do the same though. We have to give this a chance, form an opinion, and then provide constructive feedback. That's the best way to interact, so please do so. Oh, and this is the start of a bit of a new era today on this channel. I've traditionally been pretty diplomatic on here, but for some time now, since the Battlefield 5 stuff kicked off and everyone got mad, I've been receiving pretty extreme criticism, insults, and just generally uninformed hate from both sides of the hashtag best community in the world. So whatever, basically. The filter is gone and I'm just going to say whatever I please from now on. I hope some of you will appreciate this even. So let's get into this. Why am I so dead set against this as a premise at this point in time? Well, from a logical standpoint, it's extremely flawed. A lot of the current complaints about dying in Battlefield 5 come down to time to death, or TTD. If you're not sure what I'm talking about, your time to death can differ from your time to kill based on the information the server provides for you. Basically, Battlefield 5 servers and or netcode don't appear to be up to the task, and you can frequently be getting blasted by someone without actually knowing about it. This can result in faster deaths than expected on your screen, deaths from around corners and in cover, and even the now notorious one-frame death that results in you seemingly being dropped in one bullet. So does changing time to kill directly affect that issue? No, it doesn't change that happens. What it does is affect it somewhat indirectly. It will now take more bullets to kill an enemy, right? Which means it takes more bullets to kill you. So will it sometimes feel like you aren't dying as quickly, even with the time to death issue still in place? Yes, probably, because it is taking more time. Does that fix the problem? No. Why? Because if someone is already getting an advantage on shooting you without your knowledge, you're still highly unlikely to win an engagement against them. Perhaps somewhat more likely, but still unlikely. It's going to take you longer to kill them now anyway than it was before, so you're still being screwed over, just in a somewhat different manner. Now you may say, well, at least we'll have more of a chance to get away and survive now. And yes, I agree with that, but not always. It depends on how bad the netcode and server issues are when paired with the ping and packet loss of the two players involved in the engagement. I'm not seeing this being discussed currently, but it's absolutely a very real factor. I played Destiny 1 extensively for like 3,000 hours and got to a pretty good level of ability on it. I played on their poor netcode and servers. I played with their terrible skill-based matchmaking, and I played with its longer time to kill than Battlefield. And I can tell you that increasing time to kill doesn't simply fix the problems at hand, it just changes them. So if you think dying around corners is bad now, you just wait, because in extreme cases, you're going to be dying halfway down a corridor after supposedly turning a corner and being out of sight, because once again, changing the TTK does not fix a TTD bug. And what about the logical order of this alteration? What's happening here is a core, and I mean core, possibly the most core, gameplay design aspect is being changed due to reasons which could more than feasibly be being heavily impacted by a gameplay bug. See what I'm saying here? We're changing the entire feel of the game before fixing that bug. The core aspect of the game's design is being changed. In any other walk of life, that would be seen as a truly short-sighted and illogical decision. The order is wrong. I mean, if my neighbour complains about being cold, I don't set fire to their house in order to warm them up because I can't find which of their windows is open. Additionally, altering something so huge this early doesn't exactly do much to quell the comments of the game being rushed and not ready. At this point, it's damn hard to argue against that. In fact, I wholeheartedly agree. This game was and is not ready for release. Straight up. I enjoy this game, I want the very best for it, I hope it turns out to be fantastic, and my channel has so far been built on this game. But it wasn't and isn't ready for public consumption, period. I don't want to mislead you, so that is how I feel. I think that's the truth. Whether I support this game or not, it was not ready. And what's worse is that one of the regular defenses is that Battlefield never releases in an acceptable state. Give it time and it'll get better. That may well be true, but these days, that just seems like an even worse scenario rather than a mitigating factor. I must stress though that pressures are of course put on DICE to get the product out to a set deadline, which no doubt causes massive issues if that deadline is too hard to meet. So I have some sympathy for them in that regard. But back to the matter at hand. Does this alteration mean that DICE feel they may not be able to fix the time to death issue? Does it mean it's too hard? Too expensive? Do we just have to accept a blatant bug in the core gameplay mechanic of the game? Or are they simply trying to stop the bleeding right now by doing something because there's so much bad press around the game? Whatever the answer, it's not positive and I'm sad about it. This issue being stacked on top of everything else has me feeling pretty down about the game, and I'm a big Battlefield fan who's built his channel on this game again, to reiterate. So if I feel like that, I can't imagine how others feel. But let's move on, because I genuinely have plenty more reasons why this doesn't make sense. Let's talk about the reasons DICE are publicly presenting for why they're implementing this change. Well, they're saying, and I quote, "Although not extremely vocal within our deeply engaged community, we see from our data that the wider player base is dying too fast, leading to faster churn, meaning players may be getting frustrated with dying too fast that they choose not to log back in and learn how to become more proficient at Battlefield 5. Sounds like a bit of a muddled mess of vague terms, you might say. So do you want to know what it means? It means that they don't have mass feedback to support this change, and they're instead changing it because they're attributing people stopping playing the game due to them dying too quickly, because it couldn't possibly be down to bugs, crashes, freezes, map design, visibility, or any other relevant factors apparently. Call it logical fallacy, call it a straw man argument, call it corporate speak, call it pandering to the less able, whatever you want. It's vague jargon that simply doesn't add up, and it's being used to create a narrative that supports a decision that the devs think might maybe pull this game out of the mire. Because I've seen almost all feedback from the community stating that the time to kill is good, it's a positive, it's fun, it creates a higher skill ceiling, and it feels rewarding. Well, that's now being changed, at least experimentally, to, I assume, attempt to keep more players around for longer. Honestly though, the only people this will likely keep playing for even a little bit longer are players who likely won't play this game for the long haul anyway, i.e. not your core audience. And we can continue down this path of communication issues. How about that I, nor nobody I've spoken to or seen feedback from, knew anything about this change being implemented until yesterday. No patch notes, no forewarning, nothing. They said this may potentially happen at some point a while ago, and then just suddenly the day before, oh, we're doing it now. I strongly feel like this was a pointed tactic to avoid as much community backlash as possible. Huge changes like this you would expect to come with at least some form of even slight advance notice. But not this time, and it doesn't fall in line with a previous statement from DICE which said, "We want to propose any TTK model changes to you, the community, and involve you in testing experimental changes with the goal of improving experiences and create deeper gameplay potential." So what have we actually received? 1 day's notice, and these experimental changes are being rolled rolled out to the entire game, aside from one playlist which has just Conquest available on the original time to kill. So in one fell swoop, the player base has been split, it's had a transformed experience thrust upon it less than 2 months after purchasing the game, and all without proper forewarning and a chance to respond adequately. And the responses that they've received about it potentially being changed a while ago has basically been ignored. Or at least they're going with, we're going to put these experimental changes in, even though you haven't asked for it. No, this doesn't mean they'll push through with it, but we'll come to that a bit later on. Oh, and while these quote-unquote experimental changes are in place, people who like the faster time to kill can only play Conquest. Yes, they did state that the experimental changes might be rolled out in this fashion, but that doesn't mean the community wanted it, and it wasn't confirmed until right before it's being put in place. And this leads me to something that was also in the earlier statement from DICE, something that I challenged in a previous video, and people claimed I was missing the point or overreacting. Well, it turns out I wasn't. It also turns out that when I was ignored when I asked directly about this on Twitter, it was for a pretty obvious reason. So the statement reads, TTK and TTD are very closely linked. We're seeing players die too often / too quickly and get frustrated because of it. So we're looking at how we can improve the experience for new players and veterans alike. This may lead to a perceived slower TTK. Now, I said before that that basically means nothing. It's vague in the extreme and seems to allow DICE to fall back on this if they decide to change this stuff in any way, shape or form. Perceived slower TTK. What? How is it perceived? Well, essentially, it's just now a straight up slower TTK that they're going for, not perceived at all. And where they're getting this information from that people are dying too quickly, I don't know, because we've already discussed that this isn't in the mass feedback from the community. And how this helps veteran players out, again, I have no idea. To continue though, I doubt many will be happy about how these experimental changes are being implemented. In BF1, this stuff was tested on the CTE, or community test environment. In BF5, we don't have that, so it's simply being thrust upon us in the actual release. This seems like a backward step. Also, I find it interesting that in BF1, the TTK was decreased, which brought a very positive reaction from most of the community. Now in BF5, it's being increased, which is bringing a very negative reaction from most of the community. Now, it's not black and white, and it's not as if the two games are switching equal values, I understand that. DICE may be aiming for some form of middle ground, which in itself isn't exactly a problem, it's just that it's not really being asked for, and it's an interesting contrast, and one made all the more contentious when you again consider how much support there is for the TTK that BF5 shipped with. Now, correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe one of the alphas for BF5 had a longer time to kill and people didn't like it. I can't be certain on that, but I seem to have that in my head. Please let me know in the comments if that was actually a thing or not. Something else I'm seeing people unhappy with is part of DICE's statement on current plans for the original TTK. They said that the playlist with the original TTK will evolve over time and is the first step toward a traditional Battlefield hardcore experience. I find this really strange, but with a slight hint of positivity. The positivity being that those who wanted a hardcore experience, well, it appears to be coming. You're going to get what you wanted. But the rest of it means that, should all of the experimental changes become permanent, the original experience is dead and gone. It also makes it sound like they're taking a very hard line on this, like they have plans that are very close to being set in stone. If the community plays with these experimental changes and doesn't like them, then it'll need to make that feeling known very clearly. Otherwise, these changes look like they'll remain. So be polite and constructive, but make sure you're heard if you don't enjoy the changes. And equally, if you do like the changes, then obviously you should feed that back as well. And I'll just add on to the end of this bit, I don't know why hardcore wasn't in the game at release, by the way. I just don't really understand, but at least you're gonna get it eventually. But anyway, now we come to the more opinion-based section. Now I'll say that I don't like the sound of the TTK changes, not just because of the more factual and logical reasons I listed already, but because I actually enjoy the times kill and what that brings. If you prefer a slower times kill, then that's totally up to you. I have no problems with that. It's down to you and how you enjoy playing the game. And I will be playing the new TTK to see how it feels, and I may well produce a follow-up video once I have, whether I like it or not. But for now, this is why I don't like the sound of the TTK changes. Firstly, the fresh feel is being wiped away. Battlefield 5 has had many complaints leveled at it, but one of the consistent positives from most of the community was that the gunplay felt great. I feel it's a shame that the key community positive is the aspect that now suffers in order to right other wrongs in the game. Then we have that the game was designed around the original TTK, at least for the last few weeks and months of development. Now what? This is going to affect the balancing of attrition, map design, gunplay, positioning, flow, and basically everything else less than 2 months after purchasing the game. As an example, it now takes an extra bullet or more to kill for most weapons, but I assume the ammo capacity stays the same. That's going to be a pain with some weapons. So does it remain a pain, or do we now need more weapon rebalancing if the TTK changes are made permanent? Will we need even more weapon rebalancing and potentially another TTK change if the TTD issue is fixed at a later date? Do players want a potential constantly changing experience where the core mechanics are concerned? I also don't like the sound of a longer timed kill when you consider the scope of these maps. A longer TTK in something like Destiny had somewhat more of a place due to the close quarters maps, but in maps this big, I predict a lot of hit markers, which could end up being extremely frustrating. And then there's just weapon usage. Take SMGs as an example. They've been seen as weak by most players since the game released. They just got a buff, and now this happens. I know other weapons are essentially being nerfed as well at the same time, but just listen to this. Now SMGs can no longer 4-hit kill with body shots only. They drop to a 6-bullet kill at 15 meters, 7 bullets at 32 meters, 8 bullets at 49 meters, and 9 bullets at 70 meters. 9. Like, I totally accept that SMGs are close quarters weapons and shouldn't be beaming people across the map, but 9 bullets? Oh, I mean, good luck, guys. And I'm not going to go through all the other weapons, but you can imagine what you're going to be dealing with based on what I've just told you about the SMGs. Like up to 7 bullet kills with ARs and LMGs and just, oh my days. It's going to be tough to take people down, I think. But we'll have to wait and see for a definitive answer. I'm hoping for the best, even if I'm very, very apprehensive about it. Make sure you play the new TTK and provide your feedback to DICE whether you like the changes or not. And now I think I've talked enough at this point, so get into the comment section and let me know how you feel about this. Are you excited or apprehensive about these changes? And if you're watching this at a point when the TTK changes are out, what do you think of them? Let me know. If you enjoyed the video, a like rating would be appreciated, as would a subscription and turning on notifications with the bell button. And finally, feel free to join my Discord server in the description and my pinned comment. Now let's head over to the Board of Awesome for the epic people who support the channel on Patreon. That support helps me do this every single day, so thank you so very much to everybody on here. If you want to join them on the Board of Awesome, the link to the Patreon page is in the description and my pinned comment. And with that all said, I'm Get Good Guy, and I'll see you next time. Laters.